Today's episode is sponsored by Tectonic Tourists. Do you need a van or equipment to go on tour? Tectonic Tourists has you covered. Large, reliable vans and great sounding equipment that bands like Metz, City of Caterpillar, Page 99, Chain Cult, Soul Glow, Infant Island, Soft Kill, and many more have used to tour and play all over North America. If you have a tour coming up, go to tectonictourist.com. Tectonic, like tectonic plates. TECTONIC, tourist.com. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a very special show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you all we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. You can go there to read all the zines we put out, as well as get music sneak peeks and even exclusive songs. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Paper Lanterns by kaki.o.badi, which is a band I formed with my friends Tom Maher and Steve Hinckley around 24 years ago. We recently released the album for the first time on cassette, so I sat down to talk with Tom for a little retrospective on the album.
I got a mixtape when I was probably like 15 or 16 years old. There was a comp with this band President's Choice on it, and I loved that comp. It's actually how I found out about Reversal of Man. And so, like, fully life-changing for me. And I wrote them a letter and was like, hey, can I, like, have more of your stuff? And they sent me, half of it was the President's Choice demo, and the other half was just a whole bunch more songs. And I ended up being pen pals with that person, and that person like sent me another mixtape which had Elliott Smith's Waltz No. 2 on it, which is like absolutely life-changing for me. But it's also that person who, which is where kaki.o.badi came from, was one of the letters being sent as a part of those mixtapes. And so, yeah, like it was just like a ton of like mid-90s hardcore, Reversal of Man, and Anti-Schism, Elliott Smith. And so it was just like really weird, really eclectic. And I spent, at the time, I was listening to just lots and lots and lots of crust punk and lots of like street punk. And so it was very different. It like style wise, it was different. It was a lot more like, it was a lot more discordant, that you didn't have the sort of very simple chord structures. And there's something about the songs on those mixtapes where it's just like, this is my jam. This is the stuff that I just want to listen to. And so I don't even think I asked them for like a mixtape per se, and just they were kind enough to do that for me. So
Yeah, I mean, like, I can speak to some experience from back then, having, having some sort of pen pals and having like an ad in MRR or whatever where, people would write you or whatever, to where I can say that like a band at that level, what I'm assuming was that level, probably doesn't get a bunch of people writing them,
No.
So like it was probably great for them as well, just to be like, whoa, this is cool. But like, do you still, like, you probably don't still keep in contact with that person?
No, I lost touch with that person, I think even before I left for college.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's the tricky part. When we had like friends from back then, and you just had like one phone number, or you had like an address, and then that was just it for a lot of instances. And that's what's so wild about like still being in contact with like say like Seth Babb and stuff. It's just
yeah.
like Seth is somebody like I chatted with on the phone, and then the next like when I'm like 16, right? And then the next thing I know, we're hanging out with them when Walken came and played in Fort Wayne, and we played with them. So like from when I'm 16 till then, right? And
Yeah.
then from then all the way until 2004 when Akamili played with Funeral Diner, and like I don't even think I knew he was in Funeral Diner until
Okay.
until like I've probably been listening. Same thing with Circle Takes a Square. I didn't know Kathy was in Circle Takes a Square. I've been listening to him for like a year, and then I found out, and I was like, "That's so cool." But yeah, it's. I mean, every once in a while, get somebody who writes me like, "Oh, I know you. I used to know you from high school," and a lot of times I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I don't think you know who you're talking to now. You think
Right.
like I think I know who's writing me now, probably more than you know who you're writing to. But
Right.
that's of course that's me being kind of ignorant and not thinking that other people may have grown and changed as much as I have. But at the same time, when I go back home to and the people that I knew from then, and if I see them at the grocery store or something when I'm visiting my mom, like they are by and large pretty much the same, to the point where it's like, okay, you're blocked now, and stuff like that. But yeah, that is really rad. And you know, I don't know if I've heard of that band before, or if that's just like that name clicks in my brain. Like, yep, that's a semi-political, if not like political, like emotive hardcore band. Like that's a
Yep.
perfect name. Or if I've like seen a flyer, or whatever. But
I, I imagine you've seen comps with them on it because they did a bunch of comps with like Prevail and Reversal of Man and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
And so, like, but you're 100% right. Like, I looked at the band name and was like, oh, this is going to be like political hardcore. And it was just a very different style. But that was an era where you couldn't just go on the internet and Google around and find clips of something. And so you find a comp and fall in love with the song off of a comp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a bunch of old comps like that where it's like, there was just like a band where there's this one song, and of course they're from like somewhere that's as foreign to your where you are as like the other side of the world or whatever, you're like and you can really connect with it, and then like never know anything else about them until maybe now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then in some cases still like, I mean, it's so weird, like, right, like even like even as late, I say late, like, I mean, it was 20 years ago, but like the internet was like a known quantity by this point. There was like MySpace, Pure Volume, but like even as late as like 2004 or whatever, when Akamili was playing, there were bands that we played with and bands that sent me like their demos, and I'm like, this is fucking great. And like, you can't find anything about them. Like,
Yep.
It's wild. Like, there was this band called the Glendoring, and they were from like South Carolina or something, and they sent me this cassette because they were trying to get a show at my house, and it was like, if like if I don't know you, it was like known to send a cassette or something or a CD or something with lyrics because, we had
Yep.
instances where,
Yep.
that became a thing, right? So,
Yep.
this band, the Glendoring, sent me this tape, and they were like, they're basically like, you have to promise that you can't share this tape with anyone. We don't own the rights to this recording. Like, it was a band that, like, they just recorded a debut album, and it was like, it was owned by like Sony or some shit. It was owned by like some big thing. And like the band literally, like, I've never heard a band sound so close to Sunny Day Real Estate, like, even since, right? Like
Yeah.
it was just like that. And I've Googled them and stuff, and like I find nothing. I don't know. Other people are better at Google than me, so it's all one word: Glendoring, Doring. If you find it, let me know. But
Do
like
you know where in South Carolina they're from?
I don't even remember necessarily if it was South or North Carolina. I
Okay.
think it was South Carolina, but like, like I said, I still have the tape. I can it's listenable, but it's like it's 25
Yeah.
years old at this point, And it is
I'm
one of those good like metal bias tapes, so it's held up better than some for sure, but
yeah.
yeah, it's
Uh, there's a record store here, and the guy that owns it, every time I go in there, I end up spending like a half an hour, 45 minutes because he played one of the fests that we put on in Fort Wayne before I moved to college, and was just involved with like that whole like mid 90s hardcore scene. And so I'm going to ask him about it and see if
what
he's
if he
heard
was
of
in the
them.
Glendoring? That'd be fucking wild.
I like I
You wouldn't be
kind of
surprised,
wouldn't be
right?
surprised. Like,
That'd be
but
funny.
every time I go in, he just wants to talk to me about race ban and
Uh,
like shit like that. So, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really like race banning, but like I'll sit here and talk to you about like Shopmaker and have a grand old time.
for
So,
sure, for sure. Um, but yeah, I wasn't even like necessarily talking about that band when I said 2004, but I was thinking about this band out of Chicago called The Conductor, right? And they had like
okay,
this was one of those things, and the guitar player of that band would send me all these demos, and like there's a whole ass like Chicago DIY group. There's bunches of them on Facebook, and I'm always like,
yeah,
anybody know this band, the Conductor? Like they had like this, and it's like you find nothing. Especially, just try to Google the Conductor Chicago. Like, good luck with that. Like, uh, but yeah, it's wild. Like, you really can like just find like this one thing, and the internet's made all of this so much more like reachable and researchable, of course, but like, yeah, I mean, there's like I just wrote about in the last issue of the zine that 7-inch by that band No Matter, and it's like I had to like I feel like I had to like do black magic on YouTube to find like a rip of that 7-inch, just so I can
yeah.
like share it with people, as opposed to just me being like, this 7-inch is awesome. You have to buy it from some shithead on Discogs,
Right.
but yeah,
And you think about how like weird search engine optimization stuff like that filters into like which bands get recognized and which bands don't. And
mm-hmm,
that like there's that band, the hardcore band Hoax, and which is like the greatest. I don't want you to be able to search for our band name ever,
mm-hmm,
because you type Hoax band into Google and who knows what you're gonna get.
yeah.
But like that it, and then like trying to find bands from from an era before the internet is just adds complexity onto it.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's why you got to have some nerd like me do it for you, I guess. Even though I'm admittedly terrible at Google. I saw the one thing that was going around a while ago, which is like instructions on how to be good with search engines, like putting certain things in parentheses and doing these other things. And that kind of instruction goes in one ear and out the other with me, unfortunately. Like,
Yeah.
it's, some people are very good at that, but I mean, you know me, like I have to do something a number of times and then I get the hang of it. But like, yeah. When I met you, you played drums a little bit, but that's like sort of something we'll get into in a second. But I can think of a million times when we hung out and did all kinds of, shit that we will not talk about. But but I was trying to think, like, what is the first time that you and I met? Like, I can't remember the first time that we met. And I have to think, like, it must have just been you showed up at a show at my house or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that had to be it. So,
Yeah.
what show was that? Do you remember?
It was. I met you when I showed up at your house for a show.
Okay, so it's not just me.
It was. It was like right after I got to Lafayette, and I had to convince somebody to drive, and there was like 6 people there. I want to say it was like some Israeli pop punk band.
An Israeli pop punk band.
Yeah, but I may be wrong about that. It may have been like illicit. It wasn't illicit.
I don't remember ever having
but I remember Alex Bond being there, too. And there like only 2 bands played, and I like walked in the front door and everyone was just hanging out like it was just, I mean, it was your house. Like everyone was just hanging out, sitting on the couch, watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with myself at all. And you were very kind, and you were like, how'd you find out about this? And I think we exchanged instant messenger accounts, and that was kind of the beginning of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, yeah, Alyssa definitely did play, once.
I think Sutek was supposed to play, but did not end up playing.
That could also describe a various number of shows, but
Yeah.
it was always like, Sutek. It was always like,
I never saw Sutek, right?
Oh, that's hilarious.
I knew all of them, was friends with all of them, but like never at any point in time did they actually play the shows they were advertised to play in Lafayette, nor was I able to make it when they played out of town. So
that's funny.
But I think it was Sutek.
It was always like, yeah, Alex
it
can't come.
It might have been a Dance and Destroy show.
I mean, we were one of the house bands for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, there were like 3 bands in Lafayette, and I was in 2 of them. And the other one we're not giving airtime to. But you know who I'm talking about. But yeah, like it's like, but it's like, Sutek was always like, it would be like, okay, like this person can't make it, so I mean, it was always like Layla was always going to be there, right? But it was always like, this person can't make it, so this time Pete's going to play drums, or like, or this person can't make it, so like, Pete's going to do vocals, or like, it was always, and I don't think it ever happened. It was always just like, well, maybe we'll just do it like this, and I don't think it ever happened, but I mean, they did play there a number of times, and I do remember Pete played drums at one of them, but that may have been before Alex was in the band.
Or after.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to get into all that, of course, but but yeah, I mean, it's really funny, like, Dance and Destroy. I mean, was there ever a more poorly adjusted group of people that managed to accomplish kind of a lot, I guess. Not a lot, but I mean, saying a lot is the wrong word, but accomplishing anything with those folks, and I love most of them dearly, accomplishing anything is a feat in itself, you know? So, yeah. And
I am still disappointed that the latter era stuff from that band didn't get recorded, but
yeah,
the Halloween show where everyone dressed up like monsters and Seth wore a poo costume is still like one of my favorite hardcore memories of all time.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty good. Like at the end, we were pretty good, and like, there is a DAT cassette that Seth supposedly still has, and he was supposed to bring it when we had just played down in Indianapolis. And when he came up to me at that show, I was like, Seth, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a little disappointed. And he was like, why? And I was like, I know it was a lot to imagine happening, but I really wanted you to show up to this show in the Pooh Bear costume. There's no reason why that would have happened, but in my perfect world, we go into this show and there's Seth, and Seth's like, that doesn't fit anymore. And I was like, yeah, I mean, cause like Seth's been lifting weights and everything else. And, but yeah, it's, supposedly there's a DAT tape, of some kind. And I don't know what's on it. But I had another one at another point, and I did know what was on it, which was like probably actually that show was on this DAT tape. And I had listened to it once, and it was a very good recording for a live show. And it was given to me. It was given to me broken. And I had heard it before. It was Jonah had it. And it was given to me broken, and he was like, if you can find someone to fix this, like this is your thing that we listened to before, you can have it. And I gave it to Steve, who recorded our LP. And and I lost touch with Steve forever. And I am in touch with Steve again, but I was like, but he, not that long after he recorded the kaki.o.badi LP, he stopped recording bands. He was just like, I got a job at a factory and I make like twice as much money. So, which is like, I mean, it's a sad day for like Dayton music, because he was so good and he was so cheap, It was a sad day for me, but, so we met at that show, and I mean, at the time, I definitely was trying to start like a million bands and stuff. So it's like no surprise that we start talking and I'm like, trying to recruit you for a band in one way, shape, or form. But like that's
Yeah.
where I was getting at. Like when I first met you, you're like, yeah, I play drums a little bit, and I don't remember, you know. I think we maybe played with you on drums once, and you know, you were just like
Mm-hmm.
out of practice a little bit, and I don't remember how it was that it was just like, okay, I'll just be the vocalist. So like
You asked.
you're just like, hey, why don't you just do this?
You asked.
Okay,
That would have
that tracks too.
that we practiced like once or twice, and basic like I what I imagine it probably was is I was probably very bad at keeping time, which was always my fatal flaw as a drummer. And that you were very nice about it, and then you messaged me and we were like, how do you feel about like doing vocals? And so I gave it some thought, and I was like, I'll give it a try. But like, yeah, I remember you were just pretty straightforward about it. Like, why don't you try this? I know this guy Steve, and I think we can get Steve to play drums. So
yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, I still something that I hold true to this day is that, like, you know, I feel like sometimes I have a knack for like like I don't know how to put it, but it's like I can tell that somebody is gonna like that somebody really wants to do it. And to me that's more important than skill, right? So like
yeah,
it's like, you know, we really vibed with like the same music. We were both like, I didn't know a lot of people, you know, I did not and still don't know a lot of people that are, you know, are as passionate about music, you know, like there was you and there was Jeff, and like you and Jeff, and we would just sit there and talk about Screamo, you know, just like sit there like we're doing right now and talk about the 3 songs that you'll never hear any other songs from this band, but how these 3 songs like blew your mind, you know? And
yeah,
and it was just like, yeah, like we should be doing something. And so I mean at the time I was just like, I definitely remember having this like mindset where it's like, well, if the person like if I could play drums better than the person, then I should just play the drums because other people, there's plenty of other people to play guitar or whatever, right?
right.
But also at that time I was playing drums in a band, or I was going to, or I don't know, or I was tired of it, you know, maybe that too. And Steve was just a great drummer, but like, Steve was definitely an unknown quantity, right? Because like
Yeah,
he wasn't really interested in that kind of stuff. I just knew he was really good at drums, you know?
yeah.
And but yeah, I think one of the things I remembered initially was was more than anything just worried if Steve and Dustin were just gonna set each other on fire, you know? Just
Oh my
like
God.
what was gonna happen there, you know?
Yeah,
But obviously Dustin didn't last very long in the band, you know, like as Dustin is also wont to do. But yeah, you know, that ended up working out all right. You know, had you been in any kind of band before that? Like,
I played drums in like a kind of political street punky band while I was in high school, and
okay.
that was the first band I was in, and like the only band I was in prior to moving away to college.
Okay.
So
But in Fort
I
Wayne,
could
you
play
were
like the 4/4 oompa beat, and that was the extent of my skill set.
sure.
So
But in Fort Wayne, you were like, before you moved to Lafayette, you were like booking shows and stuff, or you were involved
Yep.
with Josh and them and booking shows because you knew a lot
Actually,
of people.
no. I knew a lot of people, but I didn't meet Josh until after I left for like after I came
That's
back.
so weird.
Um, I knew, how did this work? John Cheesebrew, who was the drummer from Dead Letter Auction, moved in with a crew of folks that I used to go to crust punk shows with. And then he started playing drums in Dead Letter Auction with Damian Haidt and Jared Eisenbarger. And so I met Jared sort of through seeing DLA around town and like booking shows for them. And I became friends with Jared, and through Jared started hanging out with a lot of those folks and got like, and then went away to college. And yeah, Jared and Jeremy Jacobs, and went away to college. And when I came back, Josh was living in the Maumee house with a lot of those folks. And I met Josh then and hit it off talking about music with Josh. So like a lot of those folks, even though they were active and doing stuff around Fort Wayne, my old band actually played a show with Josh and Josh's prior band, Elisha's Sorrow. They played with, we played with Planes Mistaken for Stars and Appleseed Cast. And so it was us being this like straight up like Subhumans, Blank 77 inspired punk band. And like we play, and then it's a whole bunch of like kind of emo bands, Elm Tree style bands. And so,
Which like at this point, those bands are like top tier, like legends.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's just how it was in the Midwest, like back then. It's just like,
yeah.
you know, like you might play with Braid or, you know, the Ataris or what, you know, not that like I'm not putting the Ataris up there with,
Right.
you know, on that legend category, just that a lot of people know about them, you know. It's just like you might play with these bands and that's just a Tuesday. That's how,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, that's wild. Like cuz you know, when we finally started, like we had some songs together and we started playing shows and stuff. Like I remember, you know, you booked quite a few of the shows as well cuz you like you knew all these people. You had all these contacts and stuff. So it was from pretty much just like booking shows at houses and stuff up in Fort Wayne before you came down to college.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was a spot called the Back Door.
Oh, that
and
place that was in the back of the tattoo shop, or
yep.
yeah, John Q. Public played there once, and
Okay.
it was the only time that I ever went to a show and someone was wearing like one of our T-shirts at the show. Like,
Oh wow.
It
Yeah.
was wild because I was like, how did this person get a T-shirt? I don't remember. It wasn't, you know, Store Envy or Bandcamp merch back then. You know, I was like, how did this happen? But I don't know. It's like cool. I mean, yeah, that place was kind of big if I remember. So you do like fests or
we like, it was a lot of park pavilions. It like a couple of shows at the Back Door. Maumee House used to have shows in the basement. Like National Acrobat played in their basement, which is still kind of nuts. Because that basement was smaller than the Freedom House basement, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
And so it was just like I don't even know how it started. It was just sort of like, if you want to see bands that play music that you like come through town, you just have to start like inviting bands to show up. And so we played the band I was in high school, the Agnostics, would play in Ohio. And a lot of the bands we met by going to Ohio, we would just invite them to come and play in Fort Wayne. And then started getting into other bands, started doing other stuff, and through hanging out with like Jeremy and Jared and folks like that, it was all right. Well, let's put on a fest and let's get Usurp Synapse and Zagoda and all of these Cobra Kai and all of these other bands to play. And then, what's his name from Cobra Kai was like, oh, well, this show fell through in Cincinnati. Can you do it in Fort Wayne? And like and I was like, all right, well, I'll figure it out. And so that's how I met the assistant, was that a show fell through in Cincinnati and I had to help them out with the show in Fort Wayne. And it was just a process of, you just kind of, I wanted to see bands play all the time, and I wanted to see new bands play all the time. And so I figured you got to kind of do it yourself. And so just started trying to book shows that way, and then met people, and people were super nice, and tried to keep in touch with them, and moved to Lafayette. And it was kind of a similar thing where it was like, all right, well, let's do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wild too how, like, with none of the networks that we have now, like, it's wild how fast word of mouth traveled back then. Just to like where someone, got your name and number from someone who just played your house like 4 days ago, and you're like, I mean, we're talking about, like, in kaki.o.badi's, instance, we're talking about, like, 2000, 2001, but, like, still, like, I mean, that's, there's no, like, Facebook, there's no, it's just, like, we had AOL Instant Messenger, and,
It was like the very tail end of Book Your Own Fucking Life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember Steve got us a couple of shows where they were expecting the Mixel pricks, and they got us.
Oh shit! Yeah, I don't necessarily remember, like, those shows, but like that.
You don't remember clearing the room in Bloomington?
Which where was that?
It was some like spot like way out on the outskirts of Bloomington.
Yeah, the Bloomington show that really sticks out to me is the one with Zagoda.
Yeah,
that was a great show. And did Elena Trella play that show? Am I remembering that right, or no?
I don't remember the rest of that bill. I don't think I have the flyer for it.
My problem is that like, when we would play a cool show, then I would inevitably get one of my other bands to play that same place because it was cool. And and so I think that the Elena Trella, that was one of the bands that I was in with Jeff at the time, was when Elena Trella played at that same place. And I nearly gouged my eyes out with one of the, like, product things on the wall or whatever, like the hooks that they were hanging stuff on.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. It's wild. Like, I feel like we didn't play as much as a lot of my other bands. But, like, then when I think back and I'm like, we played with Page 99, and we played with Zagoda, and we played with the Assistant. We played with Kodan Armada. We played really cool shows, is what I'm trying to say. Except for maybe the ones that I don't remember for good reason, perhaps. But I mean, that's the way it goes. Like, I mean, uh, I really don't remember those shows, but I mean, bless Steve's heart for trying. Um, like
I was
any show can always turn out that way, obviously,
I had a blast. It was like I was just happy to play, and I think part of it was like we played so infrequently that it's like I don't care.
Yeah.
Like we're out. Like it. I was just so excited to be in a band that you play, and you start, and there's 20 people in the room, and then there are two, and like it's like, yeah, that was weird, but at the same time, like I've never had that experience before, and so there's sort of novelty to it that just made it. It's like, oh, that happened. That's amusing. That happened to me, and I imagine if you played 100 more shows and that happens, it's like that's disappointing. But like the novelty of all of it, like of every single show, just made it like I just had an absolute blast. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's up. That's why, like, I mean, that's why my thing is, like, that's why it's so important to me. Like, that I feel like people are there for that reason, that supersedes whether somebody can shred or whether somebody's, because I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, like, I don't, like we all like have idle time, and we all like sort of like have time when we're not focusing or working towards like what we want ourselves to be working towards. But like that's just, I mean, I don't know, you have to have that, I think. But like when it comes to playing music, taking the time, like, a 3 hour drive or a 4 hour drive, like it's not shit when you think about it 20 years later. But like at the time, it's like when you are putting in that effort and stuff, like, I don't know, like to just show up and like other people's attitudes aren't like, they're not, they're not there with you. They're not like that never appealed to me, So like,
yeah,
and I mean, you know, uh, I don't necessarily think that anybody in kaki.o.badi was ever that way, but obviously I've been in plenty of bands where it's like,
yeah.
you always had that one person that was like, oh, there's not that many people here, or whatever. And you're like, look, I've done this a bunch of times too. It's like, is it more fun when it feels like you're important or whatever? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, sure, I guess, but like, I want to be there with the people that are there for the same reason I'm there, or similar reasons or the same feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even when even at our last show, when, I mean, I have practically no memories of that, except for I was just like, I was just like, like, so like, so to tell the story, and I'm not trying to throw Steve under the bus or anything, but Steve
I
couldn't.
think it was my fault. Like I'm sure that it was like in some way I didn't convey this to him, but go ahead.
No, I mean, so it was just like it was just like um okay, if I'm remembering correctly. So what happened was we were supposed to be like pretty much about to play, and Steve was like, I'm on my way. And I was like, because we couldn't get a hold of him like all day, right? And then it was like, I'm on my way. And I was like, we had to play in like 10 minutes or something like that or whatever. It was like that, right? It was like, there
I
was like some wires crossed.
I think he was just like fully not aware that we were playing a show in Fort Wayne.
It was our last show. It was like a
Yeah.
whole big thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, um,
I think that he like fully got the dates wrong or something along those lines. But I don't remember him being like, I'm on my way. I remember not being able to get a hold of him and not being able to get a hold of him.
Yeah, it was like all day. We were like, what's going on? Like, why can't we get a hold of him? And then I thought, I might be remembering this wrong. If he listens to this and then we go and meet up and I give him one of these tapes and he's like, you asshole. I'm not trying to do that. This was a long time ago. And like
for the record, I love Steve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For the record, like there was some miscommunication. I thought that I remembered there being, but in the heat of the moment, I was like, no, it said last show. Cause Steve was like, can't we reschedule? And in the heat of the moment, because I was like this, I'm pretty much still like this. I'm not an asshole about it like I possibly was then. But like, I'm still pretty much like this. Like one of the last times when like there was a whole thing in this one point in Coma Regalia and I showed up and played acoustic. I was like, I don't fucking care. Like I said I was going to be there and I'm there. So I was just like, it says last show on the flyer. Like, we're not rescheduling this. Like, we're going to go play. And, like, we had to play, like, soon, right? But then it was just like, we were like, okay, we can go down there and play a couple songs. Like, I'll play drums. And we played a couple songs. And we were like, yeah, it's going to be fine. And, like, in my head, it went better than it should have.
Yeah.
Is that about accurate? It was like, obviously
I volunteered to play drums, and you put the kibosh on that pretty quick.
I was like, nah, I already do this.
Yeah, like you were like, I'm gonna play the drums, and Josh was playing guitar with us by that point. And I played bass, and we played like half of our usual set, and it went better than it should have gone.
Yeah, that's how I remember it as well. Yeah, it's funny. I think like one of the last times that Steve and I had chatted about kaki.o.badi, and this was nearly 10 years ago at this point, where we were just randomly chatting about it on Facebook Messenger, and Steve was like, we never did get a proper last show, and I was like, not gonna happen at this point, But yeah, that was funny. I mean, that actually would be kind of funny. Just like a band that nobody cared about when we existed. Nobody cares about now. Let's do a last show, and it'll be the same thing as what happened when Steve booked that other show, where 20 people were in the room and then there's 2 people in the room. But this whole conversation and this whole us releasing the tape after only just being like sort of like show demos, show CD versions for 23 years came about because like nobody, even though it's on the Middleman Bandcamp, like nobody goes back that far. Nobody digs in there. Nobody, when sometimes people buy the whole digital discography, and then they get that. They get the album, man. I don't hear about it. I don't whatever, which is, that's fine. But when I do show the band to someone, it's always like, holy shit. Like I didn't know about this. I never heard of this. And it's always met with like that same kind of thing that we were talking about before, where you find that thing and there's not much of this, but it's like, where has this been? And so I was like, I ought to make a way to put this front and center, and have an excuse to catch up with you while we're doing it. So, it's 23, 23 years ago at this point, nearly 23 years. Like it, it was recorded in October. Is that right? Is that what it says on the thing? But yeah. How do you?
I thought it was spring.
Oh, maybe we were. I don't know. I wrote down what you wrote down in the. I still had the liner notes from those CDs.
You've looked at the liner notes more recently than I did.
But yeah, how do you feel about those songs all these years later? Like, are there like, ooh, this is a little cringe, or is it just like, I've never thought that I was a very good lyricist. That's not really, that's not, I don't want to say it's not important to me. Like, I spend a lot of time writing the lyrics, but when I look at them, I don't see that. I just see someone that was being honest with themselves, like,
Yeah.
so if I, so like, the thing is with me is I just want to, like, I want to remember what it felt like, and I want to remember what it felt like to be there and to be present, and not in a nostalgia sense necessarily, but I just want everything is a bit of a time capsule to what your life was like then, right? And it wasn't always great, right? But those songs, like, I don't ever hear those songs and go, and then we had a falling out with this person, or then we had you know what I mean? I feel good. And yeah. What are your thoughts when you go back there, when you like relive some of that?
So when I hear those songs, whenever like I pull that CD out, like, it just like sort of instantly reminds me of you and Steve and Bev. Like, those, like, that's just my sort of like visceral imprint on those songs and what it elicits. Like, objectively, I look back on it and it's like, oh yeah, this is your first pass at trying to write lyrics, and you're 18, 19 years old, and you're you're being honest, but trying to be honest in a way where, like, you're mindful that people are paying attention. And like, that to me is a little bit awkward, but at the same time, like, reading through it, it's like, oh yeah, like, I can totally see what I was trying, like, I think what I was trying to convey holds up in that sense. That, like, songs about work where I'm working in a factory during the summers, and it's like, yeah, like, I can see where that's, like, I can still see and feel that song and understand that song and where it's coming from. Listening to it, it's way more melodic than I remember.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's way more melodic than I remember. It's way hookier than I remember. And so, like, to that end, like, I'm just, like I'm happy that I was a part of that, and I'm happy that I got to contribute to that. And so there's a part of it where I felt like I was a bit along for the ride, so to speak. And so,
Well, I remember, I also felt similarly when I was like, this is a lot more melodic than I remember. Like, I also remember that that was like my whole thing was there was something that I couldn't get away with in like other bands that I was in, which was I was like, I want to make a record that sounds like The Curtain Falls crossed with 30 Degrees Everywhere. And like, that's what I tried to do. And
and can be communique.
well, yeah. I mean, that's I'm still trying to I'm still trying to figure that one out. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, never mind. I'm not gonna tell him myself. I almost just told him myself that something that I did was like, I mean, that 7-inch, like, there isn't, in my opinion, the screamo genre does not have a more perfect 7-inch than that 7-inch. Like,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep. I
it's
think I think you gave me a copy of it the second or third time we hung out, and it felt like you were passing along some sort of ancient lore. It's like, you have to go home and listen to this.
this is required reading. Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
that and a couple of John Q. Public 7 inches. You're like, you have to go home and listen to this.
Oh, please don't listen to the John Q. Public 7-inch at this
No,
point. But
but
no, I
you were
mean, it's
specifically saying that about KMB.
yeah. I would not have said that. No, maybe at the time I would have about. Yeah, that's kind of a weird one. There's never gonna be a 23-year John Q. Public conversation, but I don't know. That was just. I mean, that band's fine, but it's just like I've talked about it a number of times with different people on the show. There was just a way of the way that I used to write lyrics that was that I'm not a fan of now, and
Yeah.
like it's not it was the way of putting the speaker's voice in the voice, like the like I would be the character in the song that is saying things that I condemned, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know how you explain that, but it's like the first song that comes to mind that more people would know of is that Stone Temple Pilots song, right? Like, I don't know the name of that song either, but it's like, the whole song, I am, the song, but like it's that way that sometimes people write lyrics where like the first song that comes to my mind of mine was like I wrote a song where it was from like it was like a bunch of things that my dad said, right? And it was like
Yeah.
I thought that the message of the song was pretty clear that like these are shitty things to say and like I fucking hate it. Like the song was called Father Figure, so like it's right there, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like when I read that stuff now and I'm like I don't like the way that this could be misinterpreted,
Right.
And like I don't so some of that stuff is weird, but I don't know. I didn't mean to do a 5-minute chat about that. Something we said in passing, but
And I mean, I think that's like the difficulty of lyrics and the difficulty of art to some degree is in the difficulty of sarcasm, where
yeah.
it's like you understand that it's sarcasm, and some people might get that it's sarcasm, but other people may take it like as an earnest statement of belief. And especially if it's not in the context of a one-on-one conversation, that sort of and you're talking to, and people are interpreting it in a way where like you can't control how they're interpreting it, like that, it can end up leading people to draw conclusions that you don't agree with, that are flat out wrong, and that like I think it's one of the inherent challenges with any sort of like use of that sort of voice as you're creating art.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree, like, none of us at that time realized that we were, I mean, we were making records, right? But like,
Yeah.
none of us realized that at that point, this was something that was going to be like immortalized, right?
Yeah.
Like, Google searchable and like whatever. There was like a sort of temporality to like the, you're pissed about something, you say it the way you want to say it, and then like, you didn't necessarily think like, well, years later this could be misunderstood or whatever, but yeah, it's like, I think like when I first started hearing screamo and stuff, that's when I like was like, oh wait, like, you could just be cryptic instead of like of sarcasm, or however you want to put it, like, you could just be cryptic. So it started being like that, and then it's just like, it's just then it just becomes this funny thing where you're like, how did somebody not realize I was, how did somebody not realize I was trans, or like, how did I not know I was trans? I was literally singing about it in this song called Beings in Transition 10 years ago. How did it? And I'm like, because like you're fucking talking about the raindrops and shit. Like, what do you, um, but, yeah, it's just like, there's always like, there's always that thing where it's like, you're just going to be like, oh, I don't, I didn't get across what I was getting across, or this was misunderstood, or, whatever. But, I was just typing out all those lyrics and stuff. And I was like, I was like, I don't know if I don't know if the lyrics I write now are any better, but it's like,
Right.
I wasn't looking at them like, wow, these are great either, but that's just me. Like, I'm much kinder to everyone else's lyrics. Like, I was like reading your lyrics, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good, still 20 years later. And you're like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm an English professor now, so I think it's shit. But no, it's like,
And like, I mean, I write for a living now, and so that's kind of it, is that it's exactly that. Like, it's so much easier to read your own stuff and be like, this person needs an editor. And like, but also like, I remember Cap and Jazz getting back together, and they're like, yeah, we're not really a band. We're just like a cover band, but we're a cover band for our younger selves. And there's a part of it where I sort of I recognize like that's just a different me from a different point in time, expressing like being like very freaked out by being far away from home and alone on like, and trying to make sense of the world at the same time. And like, it's not going to be perfect, because I don't think I was writing it to try and I don't think I was writing for it to be perfect. I think I was just trying to like write through and make sense of some stuff. And sometimes I think lyrics can be good, not just as like a final statement of fact, but as a process of thinking through deeper, bigger, more complex ideas and issues. So
yeah, just it's I don't know. It. I don't think I don't have anything to add to that. I think that's like, there's a, when you take any one part of music and examine it on its own, I think a lot, there's a, it's a diminished part of the whole
Right.
thing, right? I mean, it's pretty rare when something is worth talking about 20 years after the fact, where there was only one part of it that was like the shining example. I mean, I can't necessarily think of a band offhand, like, where it's like, this person in this band was really good and everything else was like bad and didn't work, or whatever. Like, but I'm sure that exists. My point is, like, it doesn't have to, like, the lyrics don't have to be the whole thing,
Right. Yeah.
just like, it's not prose, and
No.
it's good for that because,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah,
And I think that, like, your words and my words together made for a better sum of its parts.
yeah, I mean, sometimes it feels like you're saying something the complicated way, and I'm coming in and just saying it the way that somebody would say it to a friend. And like I'm TLDRing you or something. but like I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, I mean, what I mean by that is I feel like yours is the more intelligent way to say the same thing that I said, or something. But also, like, they are complementary, which is fun. And I think that we worked on that together more than initially comes to mind, because that kind of thing was important to us back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know, it's been fun, like, making these tapes and just like, sort of, just hoping that, like, yeah, maybe people will give this a shot, because there's a lot of bands from around that era that, like, are, they're flat out better than us, and they get like all the recognition in the world. But, like, at the same time, it's weird to me because bands from, like, the late 90s and the very, very, like, 2001, it's always just like, it's not, sometimes it's like sometimes bands from then are put on this pedestal, like, and it's like people do understand that this was a new thing, and that is part of its charm. And then sometimes it's just like, and I feel like this is the case with kaki.o.badi, it is because there isn't a time and a place stamped onto this band in particular, that when you hear this in passing, you're examining it with all of the knowledge of everything that's happened until 2024. And right. I think that the thing about the band, not that we we took the baton and carried it into the next thing, nothing like that. I'm not trying to overstate an importance that wasn't necessarily there. Like, we just got through talking about how, it was great to play to 20 people. But, like, that thing of, like, there wasn't a lot that came before this for us to uh to mirror this band on, I think is part of what makes it special, because like, I mean, out of context, it's like you like, oh, you want to make a band that sound like a cross between you and I and Promise Ring, like, oh, like Take a Number. But like at the time, like there definitely were bands that were like didn't think that we were heavy enough. But we also couldn't play like indie shows because that other thing would happen, And now it's like No One Will Bat an Eye. And like when we were playing with our friends, they got it, But
They
like,
got it.
yeah, but like, like you said, it was more melodic than people were expecting, or it was heavier than people were expecting, and neither one of those things necessarily worked. But when we listen to it now, the other thing is like, and we go back to Steve Heritage, or Steve Van Etten. I don't know why I said Steve Heritage. That's someone else I met when I was a teenager, just once though. But going back to Steve Van Etten, is that like, yeah, no screamo bands back then had recordings. Like very, very few screamo bands had recordings that were as good as ours. So like that's part, I think, of what displaces it a little bit in the chronology of like, this doesn't sound like a band that started in 2000, right? Because it's like very clear recording. And for the record, we paid $10 an hour for that recording. Like,
wow,
we did the whole thing for like $180 or something.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was just like, so when I said that, the guy quit a couple years after that because he was like, nah, I got a job at a factory making $18 an hour, and I don't have to drive my wife and children, bonkers, like with all the noise. That's literally what happened. Yeah, it's the clarity of the recording and everything just like heightens that melody, and it's really wild too, because you're just like, half of it you're just like, this is straight up Orchid ripoff, and the other half you're just like, yeah, I don't know, this is like an indie rock band, with like screaming on it, but I don't know, like, I think that there's I think it's great when people can find something that they never would have found. I think that we practically started the band this way, just by like knowing obscure bands that you and each of us, one and the other, didn't know about, and becoming friends over that. So like, I don't know, I just hope that people find this band the same way, and that like they can enjoy something that was a part of our lives for a couple years, but a pretty big part, honestly. So
definitely. And I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, that was kind of the formative aspect of the band, was just you and I hanging out. Oh, check this out. Oh, listen to this. Oh, try this out. And that a lot of it was just exploring different things that were happening and coming out, and that were like around at that time. And I think it's reflected. I think it's reflected in the album. I think it's reflected in the music.
For sure.
Edie, what's your reaction to hearing it? You've written, I don't know how many songs since then. Like, how do you feel about going back and listening to some like songs that you wrote 20 years ago?
I mean, it's great. I don't. I try to try to stay away from having like sort of a revisionist ideals about like work that's been committed to any kind of, you know, like final version of itself. So like I don't have a desire to hear it this way or the other way, you know, or whatever. Like but it when I do listen, it does it is the first thing that I have to get used to is, like you said, like I didn't remember it being this melodic necessarily or like clear, right? Because my memories of it are us in the basement, you know, of us in a whatever. And I remember guitars getting thrown against the wall. I remember people nearly crying and and falling on the ground a lot. And that's what I remember. So the recording is great, especially in a way to where you can listen to it and I'm sort of like, no, like we were doing something, you know, it wasn't all just like it wasn't all just emotion. It wasn't all just like this, like there's something there too. It wasn't just like 10 songs of like, you know, puking our hearts out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it's I think it's kind of the first thing that I'm like really proud of in like what I would call a discography, you know? I enjoy the Dance and Destroy recording a lot, but that is a bit of a novelty, you know? And and it was supposed to be. And I enjoy it for the novelty it was. And I enjoy it because we were a bunch of weirdos. And I enjoy it for all those things. But I can't necessarily be like, listen to this. This is what my songwriting sounds like. And I feel like kaki.o.badi, you can. I can put that. I can say, this is the first time I tried to write this stuff. And it's good. And that was my conversation with Tom Maher. Thank you so much, Tommy, for taking the time to chat with me. Though it only lasted a couple of years, kaki.o.badi was such a formative time for me, and our friendship means the world to me. I'm really all full of feelings right now, so I'm just gonna say, until next time, take care and do good things.